Kia ora e te whānau and welcome to the PSA Youth video series. This is what we like to call Congress 101. In this session, we'll be talking about some of the terminology used at Congress and unpack what these terms mean. Congress has some formal language, and that's because PSA is an incorporated society, which basically means it is its own legal being. The Incorporated Societies Act is super old, and that's why we have fancy language. One requirement of being an incorporated society is that you have a constitution. At the PSA, we call this the rules and regulations. You'll talk a lot about rules at Congress, as this is the only time a rule can be changed. The important thing to remember about the rules is if we don't follow them, people can legally challenge our decision making as an organisation. Because an organisation's rules are complicated, they come with an interpretation section. This is your dictionary for the rules. Now, let's get into some of those terms. Notices of motion, formerly known as remits, are proposals for changing the rules. We change the rules because the PSA is not a set and forget organisation. We're constantly changing and identifying new priorities. One example is the notice of motion we have at this Congress for the Eco Network, recognising them as a formal network. This has transpired because members believe the environment must be a critical thing to recognise when we organise. A motion is a formal proposal suggesting a course of action. A motion can be proposed before Congress, or if a pertinent matter arises, it can be introduced from the floor. They can also be amended from the floor. Motions from the floor are outside of the scripted agenda of Congress, and they can range from a number of topics. We recommend, though, putting in a formal notice of motion in advance to ensure it's fully explored and that you've got time to lobby those attending Congress. The secretariat are our national secretaries. They're paid staff who are accountable for the operations of the PSA. Currently, they're Glenn, Kerry, and Erin. Toronto, or terunanga, is short for terunanga o ngā toa awhina. This is the parallel structure of the PSA for those who identify as Māori. It is super important to note that terunanga is not a network or a sector group. It is parallel to that. Terunanga is also made up of sector māngai who sit on our sector committees, and it has a youth structure. We call that the rangatahi reps, and their role is to be the voice of young Māori members in the PSA. This role is relatively new as it just passed a notice of motion at last Congress. Many of you may have attended an AMM before, also known as annual members meetings. Annual members meetings is where the PSA reports back on their mahi to the membership. The number of AMMs weren't held this year just due to COVID. For those of you that don't know by now, we have 5 sectors in the PSA. When we talk about sectors, we mean the collections of CPS, DHBs, local government, public service and state sector. Along with our sectors, we also have networks, which are common interest groups like PSA Youth. Some networks are formal and some are informal. The formal ones have the right to vote, attend Congress and recognition in the rules. The informal networks currently don't. We're not referring to police officers here. These are people who hold a formal role and are legally recognised as people in charge of the PSA. An example of this is the Vice President of the PSA, and these people are elected at the Executive Board. A ballot. You should all know what a ballot is by now after the elections. We vote all the time in PSA because we are a democratic body. Sometimes it's with a show of hands, sometimes it's with a piece of paper, and sometimes it's online. At Congress, it is done by a show of hands for certain things, and then others will be done via a secret ballot on a piece of paper. Formal meetings need a quorum for business to be discussed to be legit. Quorum is about ensuring there is good representation present. Now, hopefully that has helped you to understand some of the terms that you'll be hearing at Congress. And if you've got a term or a word that you don't get, just let us know. Drop a comment in the video below, or DM us, or send us an email at psay@psa.org.nz. Thanks for listening in, and see you at Congress.